they didn't give out. So he will have to downgrade me technologically because that's the one that he knew and trusted. I want to say that we must embrace technology. That does not undermine the fact that we need to do a lot of preparations. Stress testing is very important. You think it through. What is it supposed to be? Stress test it, stress test, and stress test. My recommendation is test once, test twice, test three. Not just once, not twice. And to get it well. We prepare, we put out the resources to make sure that they are enough. And then where do you deploy them and make sure that the other ancillary services, such as access to network, actually will function in that place? Again, test, and stress test. Going back to the analog system, in my view, is not the solution. Every mechanical thing, technology-wise, we must also give a margin of error. I have a background, my forte, part of when I used to be, I don't know, in my previous life, numbers, statistics. I look at the margin of error. Okay? Is it 30%? Is it 3%? Is it this? And if you've tested that over a period of time, are we improving or are we retrogressive? Maybe the first time you tested it, the error was 10%. Then you try to improve and it's minimized to 2%, to 1%, to 0.1%, and so on and so forth. If we are making progress that way, for me that is it. But to assume that there will be an error-free system with a mechanical device, it's impossible. You can even pull out a brand new car from a garage and you get home tomorrow, it doesn't start. There is that probability. Boeing and brand new aircrafts crashed. There can always be something nice. But the only thing is that we must intentionally prepare to make sure that technology doesn't fail. Embracing technology, there's no substitute to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to pick up on that point, Your Excellency, on embracing technology, I'll come to Mr. Fashola. Your Excellency, I know you gave a disclaimer, the same thing that ChatGPT usually says at the end of its search. But as governor of Lagos, two-time governor of Lagos State, I believe you can relate with this experience. And my family and I, just this last Muslim holiday, we decided to go to the Badagry beach, close to the Seme border, on the Badagry-Seme road there. And those states and non-state actors you talked about, we counted about 30 actors or actresses, roadblocks on both sides of the road. And my point is, just talking about technology, isn't there, because every one of them will tell you they have a reason for being there. Every agency of government will say they're inspecting something, that could be smuggled in or smuggled out. Isn't there a technological solution to this?
I am in retirement now. And I think that is what Governor Charles Soludo is looking forward to. When he came in and they were reading his citation, they showed that he became a professor at 38. And I told him that's too much akukwo. So, maybe he might help us with the problems now, because they understand the language that those people are speaking. I left 2 years ago. Oh, seriously. There is a trade-off. We don't want stops and searches. But data will show that they have yielded troves of evidence, they have yielded very valuable apprehensions. But how do we find the balance and migrate from only those physical methods? And I think that's the point you raised, and it's to ask, what are they looking for? They're probably looking for people who are purveying arms illicitly, for example. What is the possible technology by which we can probably apprehend a car that is carrying in its boot somebody who has been kidnapped, except perhaps some of those random searches. But in the event, we then have people who have no authority at all, to be on the road, and they erect obstructions in the way of commuters. Of course, there will be a mixture in some places and totally a separation in other places. I honestly can only recall that in the time that I was governor, we had a problem like that across the country that we discussed at the National Economic Council, and then we resolved that all governors should work within their zones to curtail, bring down, or reduce the number of these illegal roadblocks, because they were translating to very measurable increases in cost of services, cost of food, and cost of living. And I think that we succeeded in the main at the time. And I think it's something to go back to now, to review what is necessary, what is unnecessary, and also, as commuters, as citizens, the presence of law enforcement on the highway offers a measure of confidence as we encounter them. But they must not then become the point of pauperization, if you like, as they extort or people do that. So there's a trade-off somewhere, and if there's technology that helps to then address some of what they do, or all of what they do, and we can, as it were, dispense with them, bring it on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question is for President Aminat. So Africa has about maybe 10, 11 unicorns. 30% of those unicorns were started by people who schooled locally in Nigeria. Now, over the last 26 years, we've had about 160 private universities. But there's an issue with the jobs. So there was an article in Bloomberg yesterday or 2 days ago, which said African MBA students, as a share of applications coming into the US, has grown from 4% in 2019 to 27% African applicants by 2024, led predominantly by Nigeria and Ghana. The reason they gave for that is that the African economies are churning out a lot of graduates, and the domestic economies cannot provide enough jobs for them. So as we embark on educational reforms, how do African economies create the atmosphere, the environment, to create enough jobs for these people? Because even the ones we have now, we've got a problem of getting them employed.
Thank you. You know, Africa's population by 2050 would be about 2.5 billion. And if you look at the percentage of young people, we are talking about those with the median age of 14 to about 20, 24. So the issue is there in terms of what increasingly people are referring to as the youth dividend. Now, and if you put that globally, if you look at the European continent, is aging. Japan is aging. So this continent has the ability to be the supplier of manpower to the whole world. But Africa also needs her own manpower for her own development. Now, what kind of development do we want? There are economies, for example, if you look at a country like Austria, if you look at a country like Switzerland, for example, they have not gone into tertiary education, PhDs and all that. They have focused at a certain level. And if you look at the entrance in Switzerland, for example, a PhD program, you find it is quite a small percentage. So what we will have to do here on this continent is look at the creative sector, but not forgetting as well, we heard a lot about technology, what technology will do in terms of a disruptor for jobs. So there has to be a big rethink of the productive sectors which will absorb a lot of this manpower. The other thing is that while we are producing so many graduates, what are the absorptive capacity of their sectors? Again, I'll come back to this issue of sectors like science-related, IT-related, you name it, production. And so we're going to have a rethink. But I think one sector, and I keep saying this, it may sound like a broken record, where Africa stands to really make an impact is the sector of agriculture. If you look at the entire value chain, we really have a potential to make a dent because A, we'll become food sovereign, and I'm not using the word food security here, I'm using food sovereignty. The second thing is that if you start transforming at all levels through innovative practices, we can create lots of jobs for our youth. And don't forget, these are the figures from the African Development Bank, that the sector of agriculture is already a $1 trillion business. That's one thing. If you look at the sector of energy, we've had many companies operating. We've seen, for example, Mkopa, for example, in Mali that had started for energy. So we need to be able to provide energy to 600 million people every day on Africa that go without electricity. So the potential is there. But how now do we actually articulate our decision-making, our strategy to bring energy, to bring water, to bring food? And this morning I was reading something which was amazing. 50% of Africa's water is located in a country called DRC. 50%. And yet we find that so many other areas in Africa, they are without water. So let us get back to basics. Let us look at what we have in terms of strength, what we have in terms of weaknesses. And increasingly, we need to convince operators, we need to convince many stakeholders to come and invest in Africa. Why it matters to invest in Africa, then you solve the immigration problem. And this is something that we have to be worried. I mean, while people talk about immigration, automatically people look at people dying in the Mediterranean. But immigration is happening intra-Africa, and nobody is talking about it. So we need to really strategize to develop key sectors that will create jobs and that will empower young people as well to become job creators. And technology actually has the means of doing that. And there are many good examples. I won't have time to go into all of it, but telemedicine, where people don't have access to doctors, and yet there's so much that can be done. Drone technology for delivering resources to places which are really remote. All these are tried and tested examples, but we're going to have a rethink at the level of the continent to see how we can transform our human resource into human capital and create jobs for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Excellency, before you put down the microphone, the next question is also for you. Yes. You have to agree that we have to touch on this subject. Democracy is about inclusion. You were, as the first female president of your country. In Nigeria, where we are, perhaps the legislative representation, female legislative representation, is still probably under 6% of the total number of lawmakers at the federal level. In the past 3 or 4 months, there has been a back and forth between a certain male legislator and female legislator. we still do not have a female state governor. And I have one wife and 3 daughters. What are we afraid of? Just to put it clearly. Thank you.
Well, I will start with a cliche. I'll say that a bird cannot fly with one wing. So a bird, it cannot fly with one wing. So if we really want the economy of any country to move, we're going to have to be as inclusive as possible. And we have also good examples. I'll go back to one country, Rwanda, for example. It had started with a genocide, 1994, and the country has really brought in, I think it's one of the countries in Africa with the highest representation of female. Next one, I think, is South Africa and Ethiopia. And if you do a correlation, you'll find that these countries that have been inclusive, that have included many more female, these countries have been more prosperous, right? And they have moved very, very fast. So I think we just have to come and walk the talk. And if you say we're going to be inclusive, let it not be a slogan. Let it really become a reality. And for your daughters, just like I have daughters, like I was a daughter at some point as well, there's one thing that we're going to have to teach our girls. We're going to have to teach them to take risk. I did. I took risk, right? Then the second thing I have in terms of messaging, and it may sound funny, marry well. Choose your partner. While behind every man's success there is a woman, behind every woman's success there is a family. So we need the supportive husbands. We need them to actually bring them on board. Now, the other thing I just want to quickly react on, you mentioned democracy, right? Democracy is a word which has been used and abused, right? What do we really mean by democratic process? Very often people say, oh, free and fair election. Yes, that's one component. The other component is good governance, has been mentioned so many times before. It means an independent judiciary. It means a free media, precisely to address the issue of free speech. It means many things, and it is not only the power to go and vote. That's fair enough, you can vote. But if you stick to just the voting and you ignore the equal opportunity, the freedom of speech, independent judiciary, media, all these, then you just become electoral democracy. And I don't think that serves any purpose whatsoever. So we've said also for Africa, we haven't really had independence, we've had flag independence. It applies to so many parts of Africa. So let us not make democracy just becomes an electoral democracy. Let us make it work so that it becomes really inclusive and it really brings people on board together. Thank you.
Much. Thank you. Professor Jega, the next question is for you. I remember when you were chairman of INEC, you introduced the use of university professors as electoral officers. I mean, you said for them to have passed through the system, they must have some level of integrity. And I think in 2019, you also criticized, how they had gotten involved in some corrupt practices. I think at the last count, 2 of them have been jailed. Just given your experience from an electoral perspective, do you think we should still be using these university, dons for this process, given the antecedents? That's the first question. Number 2 is, from an inclusive perspective, Nigeria, we have BVN, we have the voters card, we have all these things. And a lot of youths feel that just looking at where we are from a technological perspective, why can't we have electronic mobile voting like some countries like Estonia? A lot of people feel that's the easiest way to get inclusion. Can you just give your thoughts on those 2?
Thank you very much. I will start with your second question. I think we have to understand the need to make haste slowly. We want to scale up the use of technology. But if we do a realistic assessment, we see that there are a lot of gaps in technology infrastructure which will constrain how far you go in terms of the use of technology. So, I mean, Estonia, yes, they use internet voting and so on. It's a very small country, but of course they are more advanced in terms of the infrastructure that can help use technology. In Nigeria, you are still struggling with internet service, even in some major cities in certain areas, you know, not to talk about our rural areas, which are terribly underserved. So if you want to say, I mean, you can't even contemplate that. Secondly, there are serious challenges. We are not even an equipment manufacturer. And you need certain levels of relative independence, you know, in terms of what equipment you can produce. Otherwise, you become hostage to some equipment manufacturers, and it affects the extent to which you can use technology. So that's why I say we need to make haste slowly. There is a lot that we need to do to invest before we can go. People talk about after the 2015 elections, people thought by 2019 we should be using electronic voting. You know, the Indians are still not using electronic voting. They are using something like mechanical voting, you know, and their equipment manufacturers, they are, you know, they have better technological infrastructure than we do. So really we need to make haste slowly. Everybody recognizes that we need to upscale the use of technology, but we have to make sure that we don't take a jump in which there are no steps. You know, you end up really not getting the value that you require in terms of using technology. So my argument is that it's possible, for example, to insist that, and we've started that, by 2015 up to 2019, there was no legal framework for even piloting electronic voting. The Electoral Act expressly prohibited electronic voting. It is only in 2022 that was removed. You know, so, and not much has happened in terms of improvement of the infrastructure that you would require to be able to do that. So frankly, yes, we should do that, but we should make haste slowly. It's not something that can happen immediately, and we have to be very, very careful about that. With regards to using academic staff and first of all, one of the challenges we have in this country is that people are looking for minor faults which they can overblow. In each election, we use thousands of university professors and senior lecturers, in some cases even lecturer ones, you know, because we use them for compilation of results and declaration of results at the constituency levels. Now, the people prosecuted, you mentioned two, is statistically insignificant, but that is what the media will hype on. You find two people who have committed an offense, it is what goes in the news, and it is used to make it appear as if all the other professors are fraudulent, as it were. You know, so frankly, even coppers that we've been using. We use in an election, the last election, over almost 1 million coppers, you know. How many of them were prosecuted? Maybe 10, actually caught with irregularities, you know. But then people will say all the coppers are complicit in terms of the fraudulent activities that happen. So frankly, we had to use professors, let me say opportunistically. What happened was that at the time I came into INEC, the resident electoral commissioners were the ones who were declaring governorship election results in the states. And the electoral officers at the local government levels were the ones who were actually declaring results at the local government level. These are the same people who, before an election, will deploy, will distribute materials, would be responsible for, will be responsible for retrieval of election materials, and it's very, very clear that, and at the end of it, they will now come and sit overnight and collate the results and declare results. It was, in the first place, humanly impossible. In the second place, because they are INEC officials, they turned it into clearly a money-making venture. So when we came, we said we had to deal with that problem. If you are an electoral officer or a resident electoral officer, busy yourself with the preparation and the conduct of election and the retrieval of election materials, which will be required for litigation after results are announced. But you cannot come and sit overnight and declare results of the election. So where can we get people who can help us do that? And that was how the university people came in. I tried ASU. ASU said they are not going to touch elections. It's going to mess up their integrity, because election was terrible at the time we came into INEC. And I was lucky I had been a co-chairman of the Committee of Vice Chancellors before I went to INEC. So I now use the Vice Chancellors to help us get academic staff using a good, transparent selection criteria, and they will vouch for them. And that's how we started using academic staff in the election. And up to 2015, in fact, after the 2011 elections, the MBA, the, what do you call it, engineers, not Korean, what do you, the professional, the NSC, yes. They all came, they said, well, they also wanted to participate after the 2011 election. But we said, look, when you are doing something and it works, why change it? So we stuck with the professors, and I can tell you frankly, the level of integrity they brought to the election. A vice chancellor who had served 35 years in the university system, who has actually become a vice chancellor and has just a few years to retire, substantial, overwhelming majority of them were not going to damage their integrity that they built over the years on the matters of election. Of course, politicians use all methods of inducement, but the fact that only about 2 professors, not to talk of vice chancellors, professors have actually been prosecuted for electoral offenses, frankly, is statistically insignificant. It's terrible that it has happened, you know, but I don't think it's something you can use to say that we shouldn't use those people who added value to the election.
Follow-on question from online. When you were speaking about, you know, make haste slowly, someone typed in the question online that, but when we were doing trader money, we were using mobile to send it to people.
No, I think, okay.
I said we're using mobile to send it to people. So I think that from a mobile perspective, are you saying we should give it some time? In your view, are you saying, look, maybe we'll give it 5 years, 6 years, 7 years or something? But should it be something we're looking at?
Of course, now that the ban has been lifted, it's now for INEC to begin to, first of all, look at what technologies are available, which technologies are adaptable, and which ones can they even start to pilot tests. You know, for example, in cities, maybe in Abuja or in elections of professional associations, you can deploy some electronic voting systems to begin to pilot test them. But don't make the mistake of saying because individuals use OPay and other mobile systems for personal transactions that you can use that for elections. The security, the cyber security will not be there. All the results will have to be channeled into a particular system, database, and all coming at the same time. Mobile technology in which you use for financial transactions by individuals, you cannot envisage to use that for elections in Nigeria as of now. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Our time is up. We've actually... by the authority of the convener, we have another lease of life, if you like, and another round of questions for everyone. And I think the way I want to put it is, as your parting shot, I know Professor Jega had argued against authoritarian reversal, but I would like to ask, let's assume, you know, in a utopian democracy, all the stars are aligned. You have the powers of the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. What one thing would you do to improve the democratic process in Nigeria? And as the professors will say, discuss 20 marks. Professor Jega, over to you, sir. And then we close.
Frankly, we shouldn't joke about the possibility of authoritarian reversal. And that's why we all have to be engaged to ensure that the conditions, you know, the possibility is checkmated. First of all, there is what scholars call global resurgence of authoritarianism. And we can see it even in places like the United States of America. In countries like ours that have had a long history of military rule, that are being constrained by the legacies of military rule in the practice of democracy, and in which our politicians are so reckless and so short-sighted, you know, in the way in which they practice democracy, the possibility is always there, as I said, like a sword of Damocles hanging over us. So we have to take it serious, and we all have to be involved about how we can improve, you know, deepen the democratization process, improve democratic mindsets and the value reorientation, and the strengthen institutions so that they can actually be strong enough to withstand the challenges that politicians pose with their authoritarian disposition. So we really need to pay attention to that. Of course, there are no easy solutions, as many of us say, but we just have to keep on improving. We must never allow that to happen. There are always opportunistic people lurking around, even amongst the politicians who lose out, who, if we are not part of it, they let somebody else come in. And it's a very, very serious challenge when they can mobilize religion, they can mobilize ethnicity, you know. So all these are serious dangers that really we must pay attention to. And to my mind, value reorientation, which Soludo spoke about, strengthening institutions, and of course mobilizing citizens for active engagement in the political process, you know, in order to keep on improving the integrity of the process. I think is very, very important. And civil society organizations have a responsibility also in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jega. Your Excellency, Dr. Amina.
I think the previous speaker has summed it all very nicely. I should say the stars may be aligned, but I think it's still work in progress. And we need to engage more and more with civil society. But more importantly, we have to agree that politicians come and go, but institutions stay. And it is through institutions that we will drive democratic process changes, because this is how, when we live up to the values and, of course, to all the salient features we have discussed about strong democracy, we can only do it through the power of institutions. And let us get engaged. Let us apprise our young people. Let us get them on board as well. Let them trust the system. And that is very, very important. Increasingly, the civil society must increasingly trust institutions. When this happens, and if you lose trust in your institution, forget it. It's going to be chaos. So let us keep on building trust in our institution. Let us live up to the values of democratic processes. And this way, we can be assured that generation upon generations coming after us will ensure that they live up to the expectations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Governor Fashola, we'd like to take you on word, and then we'll close with His Excellency, Governor Soludo.
Well, I think that the only thing I could usefully add is to reiterate the thesis of my intervention, which is that we must remain eternally vigilant about the deepening of the rule of law and the dominion of law and order. All of what has been said about institutions, about compliance and all of that just requires the enthronement of law and order. It is impossible to assume that we would have a perfect collection of compliant people in every community, club, village, or society or country. But it is law and order that enables us to ensure that there are consequences to their deviant or non-compliant behavior. And it is law and order that enables us to protect ourselves from those who want to harm us, either by putting them away through the judicial process and confining them in a correctional institution. Whether or not we can speak freely, we should not assume that there would not be people who would threaten those rights. It is the enthronement of law and order that finally protects those rights in a way that sanctions and inhibits those who threaten it. So, in 2 words, law and order.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Your parting shots.
On the same one.
On the same.
Oh, thank you very much. I thought that they have finished the summary, and mine is just to thank you very much and thank Pastor again for this wonderful opportunity for this national conversation. For me, put it this way, put it almost like as a slogan: participate or stop complaining. You know, participate or stop complaining. There is no substitute to it. There is absolutely no. There's a eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And in my presentation, I did talk about this vigilant and participatory citizenry. There is no way you are going to build a nation on a sustainable basis without the active participation of citizens who are informed. But just going back to the point I made, but you have to participate with a compass. You have to participate with a compass. And so let's begin to organize people if you like, I talked about the neo-nationalists, those who believe, those who have certain values, some principles about how a society should be organized and governed, must come together as a block, because organization is power. And if we don't, I mean, you'll be taken one by one. So first, those who are for, those who are here, left or right or center and whatever, let us organize with a compass. But when what drives that organization is transaction, rather than the quest for transformation, because the two T's are in conflict, transactions versus transformation. And more often, the transactional component seems to be the one that is dominant. And that is why it is very easy to pick people very easily. Once you dangle a few things, everybody, I mean, a lot of people will align on one side once you dangle the carrot, as it were. In that way, it will become difficult. But if there is a belief system, an ideological core that becomes the organizing framework, the compass for our organization, it will be easier for us to be able to stay the course and say, never again. Only those who believe and only those who dare to participate can preserve this democracy, deepen it, and get it to flourish for a nation state that we all crave for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can we give our speakers another round of applause? Thank you very much, sirs. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Technology that helps to then address some of what they do or all of what they do, and we can, as it were, dispense with them. Bring it on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question is for President Aminat. So Africa has about maybe 10, 11 unicorns. 30% of those unicorns were started by people who schooled locally.
Please keep appreciating them. We've truly, truly been honored to experience what I call a masterclass, a free masterclass in democracy. So as we demonstrate as a sign of honor, let's allow all of our speakers, as they are ushered into the green room, as we keep applauding in appreciation for the contributions we have so graciously received from them this morning and afternoon. Let's keep the applause going as we say a very big thank you to all of our speakers. And of course, please, a round of applause for yourselves. You have been the most excellent audience. Thank you so much for your presence here. And also thank you to all of our participants online. We'll say once again, Happy Democracy Day, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Have a wonderful day.